Oh, Foot Clan, get your helmets on so your brains don't explode, because people have been asking every year, what is the best draft day app to use? Well, the people over at Draft Day app have the best app to use. They are using our rankings to put into their app that is so smooth and so easy to use at your draft. You can customize the rankings. You can make them your own and then track the draft live very easily. I've used it. I love this app. I think it is absolutely great. So check it out. If you have a phone, and I'm pretty sure you do, get it out. Go to draftdayapp.com and give us feedback on Twitter, because I think you are going to love how this helps your draft.
Hey, this is David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Play Draft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
We're back. I was not aware that if you put a helmet on, your brains can't explode.
Look, we love our
science.
Yeah, we love our listeners. I don't want injuries when they hear about, Draft Day app.
I mean, doesn't that mean if your brain explodes, then it's just in there? Like it's just in there with the helmet?
You're protected.
I think that just means your brain has grown, like inside your skull.
Yeah,
it's
you're
just better now.
You're smarter.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's exploded in a good way.
Yeah. Congratulations on your new
More
intellect.
more nooks and crannies in the
That's
brain.
pretty cool.
Means
That's pretty
more
cool.
knowledge.
DraftDayApp.com. Welcome to the podcast. Thursday, August 10th,
What a start.
2017. Our brains are currently where they were
They're
yesterday.
still contained.
Very excited. Had a preseason game last night. Today we're getting into the top 10 wide receivers on the show today. We'll talk a little bit about that preseason. Guys, have both of you watched episode 1 of Hard Knocks already?
I certainly have.
I did as well.
I have some thoughts.
I did
like
too.
I have been so
This is great. We haven't talked about this.
I've been cautious with my kind of endorsement of Jameis Winston as this otherworldly fantasy value this year, because you look, Deshaun Jackson's great, Mike Evans is enormous and great, and this team has so much potential, and I still feel that way. and it's not, I want to be clear, like I'm not saying that I think Jameis Winston is a bad quarterback or dumb or anything like that. Like I think he's great. I think he's a humble guy. I think he's a great quarterback. But what's so evident, I think, in episode 1 is that he is young. He is so young. He is 23, and it is just – it takes time to be a Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Luck type of player, and he doesn't have that experience yet. So I think the mistakes that we've seen will still happen, and I think the highs and lows will still be there with Jameis Winston.
The most telling part for me, and I completely agree with your take, was the sit-down with Dirk Cutter.
Yes.
Where it was clear as day Dirk Cutter does not believe that Jameis Winston is ready, and he's talking to him about, hey, don't lose this for us.
Yeah.
In college,
You could go Greg Jennings.
Yeah,
you could put the team on your
he's
back.
like, you don't need to do that here. So they're going to want – I mean, Cutter wants to run the ball, wants to be defensive-minded despite being, from an offensive background. That's what I took out of that. Also, I took, like I said, several shows back, and we're going to talk about them on today's show. But every time I watch film and see with my eyeballs, not stats, not metrics, I look at Mike Evans and I watch him play football. I go, this dude is awesome.
He
very
is
good.
a
Beast.
My top 2 takeaways, number 1, Jameis Winston, possibly more of the prototypical man's man, because when he was checking out the cockroaches on the step, I would have already fleed.
Yeah.
I would have left that scene and screamed for Brooks to come clean
You
things
couldn't
up.
survive in Alabama.
No, I certainly could not. Number 2, Doug Martin's got some dance moves on that stage. I mean, he was gliding around. I'm moving him up my draft
He looked
board.
healthy, right? Okay.
He looked very stout.
Hey, the recipe for success, Well, he's a muscle hamster, Mike.
I know.
He's
I'm just saying, like, when you see these guys actually out of their pads and what is their actual body shape? I mean, he's
you're a superhero.
He looked like the
He's a
guy.
box.
He looked like the guy from Hook, the Lost Boy that rolled down the
bowling ball.
the bowling ball guy.
I mean, he's dense, man. That guy's.
So, yeah.
And that's not a negative
No,
comment.
hey, look, the recipe for success with Tampa last year revolved around them taking less chances downfield over the second half. We'll talk about that today. We're going to talk about Mike Evans today. This is the Wide Receiver Show. A heads up, the Listener League submission. If you want to be in the Fantasy Footballers Listener League, that ends tomorrow. You cannot submit after tomorrow, even if you beg us on a DM on Twitter.
Also, thank you very much to everyone
goodness.
who submitted. So much love and support has gone into that. A lot of work and some really cool. I mean,
How do I apply for the Listener League, Andy?
Well, I was going to tell you both how you can maybe get in this league. ListenerLeague@fantasyfootballers.com. Send us an email over there. ListenerLeague@fantasyfootballers.com. Your last chance ends tomorrow. Very excited. I'm going to press on into the news. How's that sound?
Okay.
News and notes from around the league.
We do have some news to talk about. Also, if you want to find out everything that's going on around here, you can go on Twitter @the FF Ballers. Follow us on there, and we'll always be tweeting out new stuff and our takes on the latest news that breaks this offseason. I'm sure there'll be a lot with these preseason games. So, quick thoughts on the preseason game, and then I'll go through a few bits of news. Is there anything that stood out last night for you? It was fun to see Christian McCaffrey, fun to see Watson play. What else?
I think it's nice to see this. See these guys in actual sort of action. I mean, it's not a full NFL game, but the takeaways are. I mean, McCaffrey is slippery, and I don't want to overdo it on the one run, but it was a solid run. And I mean, Derek Anderson to Greg Olsen is that's a delightful connection. Also, I don't want to steal all the thunder, but Kelvin Benjamin, those couple catches, especially that touchdown,
He's a big boy.
That was a wide catch radius.
He's a big
and he pulled
boy.
it in.
Yep. That's a big boy.
Yeah,
he's a big dude.
He did look good. It's just so fun to watch football. It was nice to see Carolina's best quarterback on the field. And
oh, come on now.
So I will say this, genuinely.
I'm a huge Cam guy this
Look,
year.
Man.
For fantasy, Derek Anderson is not as good as Cam Newton. Cam Newton's going to get the touchdowns and
Don't even
still
let
run.
the rest of these words
But
slip out your mouth. You're going to regret them.
I'm just saying.
He's not remotely
No.
in the same galaxy
He
as
will,
Cam Newton.
He will not. I completely agree with you if we're talking about NFL ability to have your team win. But if we're just talking fantasy production from Greg Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin, I would move them up. Sorry, but on the other side of the ball, not sorry. On the other side of the ball, you had a running back, one of my favorite running backs from the college days coming in, Deonta Foreman, and he looked great against third stringers. So make sure you realize, when you see that 41-yard run, not much more you can ask for him to do other than just
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, but don't overdo it. Alfred Blue looked pretty good as well.
Alfred Blue is still the number 2 back.
I thought
They're
the
gonna take
Texans'
pressure off
offensive
Lamar
line
Miller.
actually looked okay, and granted it was
playing
against
vanilla
vanilla defense. So
One of Watson's best plays was the one where he wasn't Brock Osweiler. Did you see that one?
I did.
Watson looked good on the rollout, looked good when he was moving.
They
But
kept it
man
safe.
alive, does he overthrow guys? I mean, if you are a defender going up against Watson, just stay about 15 yards behind the play.
Yeah, that's nerves.
You get
got
to
some
catch
nerves
the ball.
going on.
His first game.
I know.
All right, Martavis Bryant has been cleared
Oh.
for all preseason activities.
Be still Mike's heart.
He's not fully reinstated, but he's on track to play and be reinstated by week 1.
But he's good to go for the preseason. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is stage 1. I think we're good to go with Martavis.
Let me ask you this then. So you were happy, thrilled even to take him in the 4th round.
I lost physical form. I turned into just pure energy and love for a couple moments.
With what has happened with Martavis Bryant, do you lower him? Are you still comfortable taking him in the 4th? Do you feel like there's any extra risk here for him to lose games or to miss out on reinstatement or lose reinstatement?
If you're drafting right now, 4th is super sketchy. But I mean, I'm still willing to grab him in your best ball leagues because you're playing to win, you're playing to get first. But I fully expect him to be reinstated. So I mean, I'm perfectly fine grabbing him around that 5th.
You know who's the quote clear number 1 back right now?
According to Bob Condata from the Seattle Times.
You know who it is?
Blah 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 blah.
Thomas Rawls right now running with the ones. He had split first team reps with Eddie Lacy earlier, but Lacy's been working exclusively with the backup since then. It's make whatever you want. I've been talking about Thomas Rawls as a relevant fantasy player for months. My opinion is this. Eddie Lacy has the potential to be a great goal line back. He also has a history of being injured recently. He's going to a new team.
So does Thomas Rawls.
Let me finish, Mike. But Pete Carroll has a certain loyalty to Thomas Rawls. Thomas Rawls had a monster game at the end of the year last year, showing he's totally capable of having good performances. So people, all of my message has been, it's not been put Rawls ahead of Lacy. It's been, you better pay attention to Thomas Rawls, and he's worth a flyer.
Oh, yeah.
And most likely, this is a gross situation because the line's not that great, and maybe you've got Procise that'll have a role, so now you've got the running back reps being split between 3 different guys, and barring injury, it's going to be not very much fun.
I think that's the most it's seeming more and more that this is just an avoid the backfield area, or if you're in a PPR, maybe just go Procise.
Yeah, Procise is the one to own.
Eddie Lacy I still believe that he's the goal line back. So if anyone has more value between the two of them, it's still Eddie Lacy. But I agree that it's not shaping up to be a delight by any stretch.
Do you read anything into the fact that in New England, Deion Lewis and James White were listed as the starting running back, Rex Burkhead and Brandon Bolden with the second team, and Mike Gillislee, who's dealing with a hamstring injury, currently listed with the 3s?
Yeah, it sounds like his hamstring injury.
Okay.
Yeah. He's been off the field,
No
which
concern.
that should be the concern.
Look, slight concern, absolutely. I'd be much happier if they just came out and said, "Oh, yep, Mike Gillislee, he's the starter day 1." But it's the hoodie. He works in mysterious ways, and so I'm not going to jump off the Mike Gillislee ship just yet.
All right, almost into wide receiver rankings here. The Browns starting quarterback is, quote, Brock Osweiler's to lose, according to the ESPN Browns reporter Pat McMahon.
What is
Brock will start. Look,
trust the process.
Yeah, well, the preseason's going to be the process, so I don't read too much into that. If Brock performs in the preseason, he'll be the starter. If he doesn't, then they'll move on to someone else. Wow. So, Chris Ballard told NFL Network that it's still to be determined if Luck will be ready for Week 1. The GM of the Colts is Chris Ballard. He came out and said Pup is not an option for Luck. So those of you that were worried about Pup, that's been thrown away. It's gone. Luck will not be on the Pup. Still could miss Week 1. Don't know. We'll see. We're waiting.
Close.
We'll wait and find out. We still have
a month.
Yeah. Okay. What?
This is from the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Yeah. Jeremy Hill, out of the Cincinnati Enquirer this morning, reports of him. The belief is that he'll start all season unless he's hurt or absolutely terrible.
What constitutes
terrible?
Terrible.
Ben Jarvis Green Ellis was terrible. But that didn't stop
yeah,
Marvin Lewis.
It's a good point. Same situation here as you have in Seattle. Same situation. You've got
it's a little different because
you've got big boy goal line. You've got maybe more spry, more athletic, and then you've got third down guy in Gio Bernard. Now Joe Mixon can do it all.
Yeah, that's why it's different.
Yeah, and that makes sense as opposed to like Rawls, who can't necessarily do that. Mixon can do it all, but they're not going to use him in excess for no reason.
Right.
So he either has to be otherworldly compared to Hill, or Hill has to be hurt to have the kind of first-year Joe Mixon where the ADP was going relevance.
Mixon's still right now going, at the back of the 3rd round, and that's too high.
You better be confident.
You could grab him at the back of the 3rd, and he could explode and take over and become the next Le'Veon Bell because he's got the talent. But the probability of him being any kind of bell cow is getting slimmer and slimmer, close to none right now. And so I'm moving Mixon down in my rankings, and that's coming from someone who completely believes in his talent. There's less opportunity for touches right now in that offense, and you know that's a prerequisite for scoring fantasy points.
And we talked a little bit about this yesterday with the Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon discussion at the end of the running back ranking show. So I agree completely. All right, guys, let's talk wide receivers.
Wide receivers.
Mike and I both wore the white T-shirts today. This is very bright on the screen.
Well, it's a classic look.
Is yours just white?
Yep.
Is it just plain old white?
Crisp, clean
I
shirt.
look like a what's this? I look like a heartthrob from the 1950s.
Oh, yeah. Well, you going to Travolta?
You know,
You
roll,
going
out,
out- you
roll
going
up
out
a
of
pack of
grease?
smokes in your sleeve.
Tell me more. Tell me. Okay.
All right, I'll tell you more about Antonio Brown.
Oh, like a professional.
Antonio Brown's our number one consensus wide receiver. We're going through the top 10 wideouts today. If you missed the last couple episodes, definitely tune into the running back shows. What do you say about Antonio Brown?
So the top three is.
do
not
we
going
just
to be-
move on?
We need to spend a lot of time discussing Antonio Brown. I would say this. This is the one thing.
No, be very analytical, Jason.
Yes,
don't
I'm going to go
don't equivocate. Do
gonna
not be anecdotal.
dive deep here. It is worth
Catches passes.
it is worth noting that Antonio Brown's consistency over the last few years and his output has been at a level that is not just saying, oh, he's got a chance to finish as the one or he'll be top three. We agree with those things, but we do need to realize there is a huge gap on your fantasy team when it comes to how he scores his points, which is, just every single week, hurting your team less than anyone else, where the value of him compared to, say, a Mike Evans, it's a wide gap. And so people that want to trade up, or maybe people don't, someone in your league doesn't believe in Antonio Brown, go get him. That's pretty much all you got.
The only thing about Antonio Brown is it almost feels like it's gotten to the point now where it's like
boring to
it's
own
like
him.
LeBron James getting the MVP in the NBA. You can't give it to him every year because you're like, someone else has got to do it. No, it's still going
really
to be
should be
Antonio
him.
Brown.
All right, our consensus number 2 wide receiver, Julio Jones.
Julio.
Last year, is that he's a wide receiver 1 or 2, 64% of the time. He had that otherworldly, crazy game against Carolina with 300-plus yards. What do you need to say about Julio? I mean, like we said, there would be some big discussions, but there's not a lot with Julio other than the injury discussion.
Yeah, that's it. With Julio Jones,
Not supposed to play in preseason week 1, by the way.
that he has a tendency to get nicked up. No, not necessarily missing time, which he has done that before, but he had to get the foot surgery. But he frequently looks banged up. He's the wide receiver equivalent of LaShawn McCoy, where at least once a game you're going to see
He's limping off.
You're going to see him limping. You're going to panic, but he'll be okay. He'll play through it. But you also know that he's going to give you a couple dud games.
I have him at 2. You guys both have him at 3, and I want to tell you why I like him more than Odell Beckham Jr.
Sure.
It's a good argument between those two guys.
Yeah, and for me, it just came down to the offense. I think the offense, I like it more. Now, the dependency on Odell Beckham Jr. with Eli, that's great. So if you pick Odell, that's cool. I like the offense and the opportunity for Julio, and I just believe that maybe they'll use him more in the red zone like they're promising to do.
And the nice thing with Julio is
Every year they promise.
Yeah, the nice thing with Julio is they don't need to use him in the red zone more for him to be the number 1 wide receiver even. So if the total points for the Falcons drops, as I expect it to, I don't think that is going to hurt Julio. Julio's been great, the last 4 or 5 years with the Falcons not being otherworldly like they were last year.
All right, number 3, Odell Beckham Jr. You guys actually have him – you guys both have him at 2.
And the thing about
And I have him at 4.
These 3 wide receivers, I think that Antonio Brown is clearly the number 1, but they're called the big 3 for a reason, because if you want to take Odell Beckham as the first wide receiver off the board, okay. I mean, I don't think it's a crazy jump.
No, and you shouldn't feel that way. If that's the guy that you want, take him. Over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns each of his first 3 seasons. So far, you know what you're getting with Odell Beckham Jr., and that is otherworldly production and the ability to have those monstrous games that can win you a week.
Yeah, and he's still so young. I feel like there is a chance with Odell that we still – in fact, I would say it's likely that we haven't even seen his best yet.
That's possible.
And so if that's the case, you know, we could be looking back in a few years thinking that he's, you know, a LaDainian Tomlinson type if he keeps this up.
position.
Because his 16-game average pace over the 3 years is averaging 13 touchdowns a year. I mean, that's ludicrous.
But so we have him at 2. So I'll ask this question to you, Jason, because a lot of people have concerns with Beckham because Brandon Marshall is here. They drafted Evan Ingram, who profiles
both are goal line.
As a goal line threat. Do you still feel confident in Beckham despite those additions to the offense?
Yeah, because whatever it takes away from Beckham, right? Some of the targets aren't going to go his way. His market share of targets in that offense will be smaller this year than it was last year. But the overall offense will be better. More first downs picked up, more total points going, you know, on the board. So I think it will wash itself out, and he'll be absolutely fine. The total volume will go up while his efficiency might go down.
Before we move on to wide receiver number 4.
Or he's my number 3 too.
Oh, spoiler alert. I want to tell you about Flea Flicker. We get a frequent question, where should I set up my fantasy football league? Where should I play? So I want to make sure that you know about Flea Flicker. Flea Flicker is extremely flexible. It's very customizable. You want to do an email draft? Fine. You want to do a live draft? Fine. I mean, Flea Flicker can handle whatever you need. They have lightning.
But how much does it cost, Mike?
I haven't gotten to that part yet, but it's 100% free.
It's pretty good.
They have lightning fast live scoring on Sundays. It's easy to use. It was built by commissioners for commissioners. So that's what we want. We want a league setup it's just easy to use. They got a mobile app, so they've got you covered there. You don't have to settle for a confusing interface or sites that let you down on Sunday or can't support your league rules. So set your league up on a reliable, easy, and free site. Go to fleaflicker.com/footballers today. That's FLEA-flicker.com/footballers, and your league will thank you.
All right, let's talk about Jordy Nelson, guys. Jordy Nelson, number 4, last year led the league in touchdowns. Basically a touchdown a game guy.
So you said he's your 3.
He is.
So you are telling me you have Jordy Nelson ranked above Beckham?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And I don't think it's outlandish. Look, you put me in a keeper.
It's a little hot.
It's hot, but I agree. It's not outlandish when you
why
really
not
look at
have the player who's on the better offense who scored more fantasy points last year? I mean, I don't think that's outlandish.
But that was the first time he's ever done that, Andy, right?
Not exactly. Number 3 in 2011, number 12 in 2013, number 3 in 2014, and then number 1 last year based on your scoring format, 1 or 2. Only 1,200-plus yards and 14 touchdowns, 152 targets from a guy named Aaron Rodgers. It checks all the boxes for me. So I think the only reason that anybody doesn't want him is because he's done it for a while.
I think
and he's a little bit older.
It's concerned with
and
age.
He was banged up and missed 2015. But look, I think he belongs there. If you want Odell, that's cool. I'll take Jordy.
The thing about Jordy Nelson, if you watched him play last year, he was getting saved by touchdowns at the beginning of the year. He was only averaging 53 yards the first 7 games. After that, though, Jordy Nelson returned to form. He was averaging almost 100 yards per game. And
well, let's remind people, return to form. You're saying that because he missed the previous one. So starting the year slower on yardage, maybe to be expected if you're getting back into form.
Certainly is. So I would take Beckham over Jordy Nelson, but if you grab our ultimate draft kit, you will see that we have Jordy Nelson, in fact, in that tier number 1 with those guys, because I believe so passionately about Jordy Nelson, and so does Andy. He's the wide receiver 1. He's a guy that has overall wide receiver 1 value that slips to the back of the first or the early second round, unlike the other 3 we've already talked about.
Yeah, I am of the 3 of us. I would be.
You're the most skeptical.
Yes, I'm the most skeptical of knowing that he has the same season at age 30 2 that he was able to do at 31. And the reality is, when you go back and look over the last decade, players that had great seasons at age 31, you have a mixed bag, right? And they're all great. Brandon Marshall, that was his 2015 year. He was amazing. 2016, you blame the quarterback, right? That was.
We didn't even talk about Fitzpatrick sneaking into that Hard Knocks episode.
I did see that, yeah.
Last year, Jordy Nelson. You had Terrell Owens, another Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver who had a great age 31 season. Age 32 completely fell off. But there are same with several others. But there are the opposite. Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson, who had great age 31 seasons and great age 32. When I look through the list, the most telling factor is their quarterback.
I was going to say,
Aaron
Reggie
Rodgers,
Wayne, was that still Peyton?
Exactly. He had Peyton. Wes Welker, he had Brady. If you stay with a great quarterback, you're a much safer bet. So when I say I'm skeptical on Jordy, it's just because, look, he's 32. Last year, the Packers threw way more than they wanted to and way more than they usually do. So I expect a little bit of regression. That's why, personally, I don't have him in the same tier. But I do believe he repeats. He is my number 4 receiver, and he should be drafted.
So he's the top of your tier 2.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, A.J. Green comes in at number 5. I have him at 5. Mike, you have him at 6. Jason at 4. His ADP right now is a spot ahead of Jordy Nelson. And if I'm at the back of the first round and I'm not going running back, I consider myself extremely lucky if I get to draft A.J. Green or Jordy Nelson and then turn around and take somebody in an early second round at running back. How good is A.J. Green? Okay, you had the injury last year, so all of those season-ending, misleading final numbers, you don't have them to throw into the corner of A.J. Green. How good is he, though? Highest percentage of 40-plus yard receptions in the league. Targeted 10 times a game, which was the 4th most in football.
I'll take it.
96.4 yards a game average. It's number 2 in football. Do not forget about this man.
Yeah, when he was playing, obviously he missed.
This bad man.
He missed the last 6 or 7 games. He was pacing to be the top wide receiver. I mean, he's an absolute stud, and I don't know. The sentiment that, at least I get the feedback I get from when I'm talking with people on Twitter, they don't consider A.J. Green up there, up these tiers. Like, everyone's like, well, it's clearly I'm going to take Mike Evans over A.J. Green, and I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, I love Mike Evans. We're about to talk about him, but A.J. Green had the longest consecutive 1,000-yard streak coming into last season, and he would have hit it for sure.
Yeah, he had 964 yards in 10 games.
He's an elite wide receiver. He still is an elite wide receiver. Andy Dalton is an underrated quarterback. So A.J. Green is a fantastic pick when you're coming into the early second.
Absolutely, and we've talked quarterbacks before. Andy Dalton is one of the if you're looking at metrics and the most telling rebound numbers, Andy Dalton is the leader this year for a return to more touchdowns. That I expect Andy Dalton to get back to his career average touchdown pace, which was very low last year. If that returns to normal, A.J. Green, who was already going full beast mode last year, is a great option. You're talking about a guy who has 3 different seasons of double-digit touchdowns. I mean, what more do you want than a guy who has pretty much never been on pace for less than 1,000 yards is
never
going to be close to double-digit touchdowns?
There are going to be plenty of leagues where he's in the second round.
Yeah,
plenty of leagues.
And it's silly. It's like what we were talking about with Antonio Brown. Odell Beckham, to start his career, has been sensational. So was A.J. Green, and he continues to be sensational.
Yeah, when I say Jordy is the top of tier 2, Jordy and A.J. Green are identical in my rankings. They're basically, 4A.
That does not compute.
That's identical, right?
Number 6 on the wide receiver rankings, Mike Evans. Number 6. Look, he's the special pick this year for a lot of fantasy players. They just want him on their roster, and I get it. The numbers were kind of otherworldly last year. But, Mike, break down a little bit of what we saw from the first and second. We talked about the Bucs earlier and their defense and what this team did to succeed in the second half of the year when they went 6-2.
Yeah, for Mike Evans, it's eerily similar to when DeAndre Hopkins was an elite wide receiver for fantasy a couple years ago. You saw the Texans, who are historically have this great defense. All of a sudden, their defense had fallen apart. Hoyer's having to target DeAndre Hopkins like a madman, and he's padding these numbers. And then you saw the second half, the defense returned to form as they should have, and then Hopkins' targets went way down. Basically, the same exact thing happened to Mike Evans last year. The first half of the season, he was averaging almost 13 targets a game. That's unsustainable. I mean, that's
too much.
Yeah, like that's fantastic. Over the second half, the defense improved, the running game got going. He was closer to 9 targets a game, which I want
that's
to
great.
say
I mean, that's a great number.
Yeah, that's still excellent.
We just talked about AJ Green around that. 10
But
a game.
when you drop from 22 PPR points to 15 PPR points per game, I mean that becomes a significant difference. And Mike Evans is just not up in that AJ Green, Jordy Nelson tier for me. He's still a tremendous wide receiver one. You can't bring him down too far because the player is just too amazing and will receive targets, but he doesn't belong up in that top tier yet.
You hope that Deshaun Jackson opens up, because there was an adjustment. You have that many targets at the beginning of the year. Teams did roll a lot of double coverage to Mike Evans.
He was the only target in town.
And he'll have the ability to give you multiple touchdown games, which you love from a wide receiver. I just think we're not all willing to give him what some have given him, which is the tier jump with the big three.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I don't think he's going up, but I don't necessarily think he's going to, take a huge step backwards either. Even a lot's been made of the fact that, like you just said, the second half of the season was, bad. The way that you
not as good.
But I've seen it painted as bad when they just talk about his top 12 performances. They say, after this week, he only had like one top 12 performance.
I think that he's referring to is me like 2 shows ago.
Well, I think
I'm they.
Andy's feeling self-conscious.
No. I've seen it from a lot of different people.
No, I'm not.
Just you.
I
think that was even if you go back a couple months, I think that was a common blurb on Roto-World, and it's true.
Yeah, I wrote it on Roto-World.
It's a true statement, but over from 9 to 17, the last half of the year, he was still the wide receiver 5.
Yeah.
So I mean that's
who cares?
Yeah. Who cares? So what?
What is this voice?
No,
that's from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Come on. So
look,
what?
the problem with summarizing the second half to me as he was still the whatever is he had 4 weeks outside the top 40 in the last. I mean, that doesn't help you.
Well, but
I don't care where he had a week 3, so he played Seattle. He finished number 3.
Down the stretch,
and then he had
the playoffs,
3 terrible games.
You.
So,
and they were juicy.
When I got my walk-in papers from the fantasy playoffs, nobody came over and comforted me by saying, "But Mike Evans actually ended up over the second half as a top whatever." That's why that is a
sure. He did have a few dud games, but
in a row.
Yes, in a row. But all wide receivers. Michael Thomas last year was unbelievable. Was even ahead of Mike Evans in that stretch, but he had 33+% of his games outside the top 36. It's just even the good ones have that, other than Antonio Brown, which is why I was making the point earlier. There's a difference.
Fair.
Michael Thomas comes in at number 7. I have him at 9. Jason has him at 6.
The freshly besmirched Michael Thomas.
Mike at number 8.
Michael Thomas.
Favorite number for Michael Thomas I want to share with the listeners, reception percentage. 76% of his targets he caught. 76%. There's only one player that did better.
Who was that, Andy?
And that was Beasles.
Yeah, you're darn right it was.
Cole Beasley caught like 76.5% of his catch. So basically the league
Win's a win.
A win's a win. That's his motto. Look, he's a go-to guy. One of the other numbers I love to look at when you want to say who's arrived, okay? And I know he's young, but who's arrived? Highest percentage of these third down conversion catches where you see Julio Brown and Hilton and Beckham and, Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is right there because on third down, you can go to Michael Thomas, and apparently 76% of the time when you do go, he catches the ball, and he has one of the highest floors in fantasy football. I absolutely love Michael Thomas. I don't think you can go wrong.
I agree. You've said before that he's bust-proof, and if your expectation is right, then I think you're exactly right. He's the number one target in an offense that's going to be putting up a ton of points with a Hall of Fame quarterback, 5,000 yards, and a lot's made of, well, he was a rookie, now he's going to, with Brandon Cooks gone, maybe he'll see number one coverage. It's very reminiscent to me of Marquise Colston when he was with Drew Brees, came out, had that absolutely excellent rookie year, similar to Michael Thomas. And what did he do the next year when he was the focus of the defenders? He still had Drew Brees, and he went up to 98 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That's very much, to me, in the realm of realistic and possible for Michael Thomas. I think he's a lock for 90 receptions in a high-powered, high-scoring offense as the number one target. So Michael Thomas is a guy I have on many of my leagues. I'm not afraid to draft him at all. I think his upside is there and his floor is there.
Yeah, the difference, or I would say a criticism for Thomas of being drafted this high, which he's going very high in fantasy drafts. So you're saying, well, his targets will never be what Brown and Beckham and Julio are getting when they're up at 170-plus targets. Yeah, Michael Thomas is not going to see that, but you have to factor in the quality of one Michael Thomas target coming from the most accurate quarterback in the history of the NFL. It's more valuable than an Eli Manning target. So Michael Thomas I think he is very safe. You have Brandon Cooks, he's gone. That's 117 targets, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns from the offense that is missing. Does that mean it goes all to Michael Thomas? No, but Michael Thomas still had 121 targets. If he sees
it, just solidifies.
If he shifts that up just slightly, I mean, he's even safer. That I believe that Michael Thomas is a very safe pick.
All right, number 8, T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton, the league leader in yards last year with over 1,400. T.Y. Hilton, I have him at 7, Jason 8, Mike 9. His average draft position for a player with that kind of potential, it's not bad. 211 for T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, it's all right.
Never been a guy that scores a lot of touchdowns. That's been kind of the problem. He'll give you, I think a couple of years ago when he had 6 touchdowns, 3 of them came in one game, and then you were kind of spreading 3 more out across
That's
the
been
other
his
15.
MO, really. It's his whole career, except for last year, was he would finish fine in the final rankings, but he was really a burst player, and that changed last year. He was far more consistent. He was a wide receiver 1 or 2, over 56% of the time, and we all love T.Y. Hilton. The only caution with him is T.Y. Hilton was 5 fantasy points a game better without Dante Moncrief on the field, who all reports Moncrief is having a monster training camp. He's already back from the mild AC sprain. So will Hilton be able to command the target share that he had last year, 155 targets? Can he, if Moncrief stays on the field, will that be replicated?
It's better for the team if those go down a little bit and you do have some other weapons to spread the ball around to.
Yeah, it's a little bit worrisome with what T.Y. Hilton was able to do last year, and the situation he finds himself coming into this year with Moncrief back, and you just said a 5-point swing is huge. A 5-point swing when Moncrief is there versus when he's not. And then you also have, over the course of 63 games, you've got 10 games that he's played without Andrew Luck. And now I'm not saying Andrew Luck's not playing, but if Andrew Luck misses a week or two, that's very much in the cards, at least. I mean, he's not throwing the ball right now. We're a month away from games. He's 5. I mean, this makes sense, but he's 5 points worse per game in PPR without Andrew Luck. So those two things combined make me a little worried, and I'm sure he'll start to drop as we get closer to the season with Andrew Luck.
If Andrew Luck continues to be sketchy, yes.
Yeah, but he'll need to drop for me to draft him for where he's going right now.
All right, one of the more highly debated players, Dez Bryant, comes in at number 9 on our rankings. I have him the lowest, and I'm going to tell you why. I have him at 11, Jason at 9. Mike, you've got him the highest at number 7. When you look at that metric I brought up about Michael Thomas and the catch percentage, the polar opposite in all of football was Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant caught 52% of his targets. That's 5th worst. So Hopkins, Fuller, Brock, Allen Robinson, Bortles, and Brandon Marshall, Fitzpatrick, the worst passer rating in the league, they all had terrible quarterbacks with terrible quarterback play that put those players at the lowest percentage of their targets caught. You could blame the quarterback. And yet, my concerns have been this same page equation with Dez Bryant and with Dak Prescott. Dez still performed, but that was due to massive efficiency. He was tied with Devontae Adams, 6.3, every 6.3 receptions he scored. That's massive efficiency. It's been hard for me to say, hey, let's just take Dez Bryant. Let's go look at what he did with Tony Romo when this offense was revolving around a passing game, and let's just translate that into present day. My concerns with Bryant is that the total targets and those things won't be there. So if you don't get that massive 6.3 receptions per touchdown efficiency, he doesn't belong in that wide receiver 1 consideration.
And I would disagree with when you're talking about when they were a passing team. Yeah, Dez Bryant.
No, he was good with DeMarco that one year.
But the DeMarco year,
I know.
He's just efficiency. That's the name of Dez Bryant's game. That's who he is. He's never going to be the high reception guy. He's going to give you, 6, 7 receptions a game, but they're always huge gains, and he's a touchdown monster. He had what do you have 8 touchdowns in his limited work
50
last
catches,
year.
8 touchdowns.
He is, when he was on the field last year, he was very consistent. I mean,
let me ask you, how do you explain, look, when Dak gets back to pass, if he throws it to Cole Beasley, 76% of the time he's catching. Now, but Beasley's running in the flats, so maybe that's the biggest thing. But when he's throwing the ball to Dez, it's 50%. So you've got this go-to situation. Do you think it can improve between Dak and Dez to the point where, you're not counting on touchdown or bust situations?
I mean, I don't think that that's going to change. I mean, Dez is who he is. His role in that offense is already solidified, but we've seen from years in the past that it can be unbelievable. Now, the past couple of years, Dez Bryant has had the injury bug, and that's why I feel like people are hesitant to get back in with Dez Bryant, and I don't blame you. It's when you haven't seen a guy perform in 3 years, it's pretty tough to go all in on him. But I think that he's just such an outstanding talent and so efficient, and I think that the Cowboys are going to have to throw more with their secondary was already bad last year. Now it's been depleted even more.
This is a little bit breaking news. They don't have a secondary this year. They are not fielding 11 anymore.
They're playing 7 guys?
Mm-hmm. Unless they can work some trades. That's what I'm getting report out of Dallas is that they are not going to play.
That's interesting. I've not seen that reported yet.
No cornerbacks.
But this is a situation where I'm trusting in what Dez Bryant has done in the past, and I'm projecting Dak to improve. And this is where Jason launches into his schedule, which is also really hard to argue against.
Yeah, I mean, Dez Bryant, he's been one of those guys that has fared much better against lower-rated cornerbacks and has been shut down by higher and has been really shut down by higher-rated cornerbacks. And this upcoming schedule is terrible for him. I think Andy bringing up the 50% accuracy or reception percentage is good because that to me shows room to grow. I don't expect him to stay around 50. He's always been a 60% receiver plus. I mean, years was 66%. So that could go up. He's got a wide range of outcomes.
He does.
Yeah, that's all it is for him.
His talent is as good as anyone in the league. He's a full legit superstar wide receiver. That's why I like him. He was on pace last year for 11 touchdowns with Dak, with the 50% catch rate. So that could go up. But then you look and go, okay, that pace, and I'm taking out games 13 where he didn't play the whole game and 14, 15, 16. So, better numbers for him. It's still only 67 receptions. Hard to take a guy with that low of volume.
It reminds me of Vincent Jackson years ago in San Diego. Because every year, Vincent Jackson, you wanted him, he was great, he scored, and he was in that 70 reception range. That would be scary. But, yeah, I mean, you basically have to place your bets on Dez Bryant.
Yeah.
He's a good DFS play on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and it's he's a second-round pick, and I think there are guys that I personally would take ahead of him. Like, if you just are giving me Dez or Hilton, I'm going to take Hilton.
Yeah, I get it.
But let's talk about the number 10 before we close out the show. Amari Cooper, number 10. I feel like Amari Cooper's career has just been kind of he's climbing the stairs to elite, and it's just put another 2 steps. He takes another step up and another step
forward,
up.
1 step back.
Yeah, it's just kind of
Abdul.
it's like a meal you're enjoying, but it's not quite your favorite meal.
Yeah, it's like opposites they attract.
131 targets is great. 80-plus receptions is great. 1,100-plus yards is great. 5 touchdowns is 5 touchdowns is not so great on 131 targets.
Amari Cooper went opposite Mike Evans. I mean, his first 8 games, he was averaging 98 yards a game. He was the wide receiver 8 in that time. The final 8 games, he was averaging 46 yards per game. I understand what people are seeing in Amari Cooper. He can take that step.
Well, you give those same receptions to Dez, and it's 13 touchdowns.
Right.
For Amari, it was 5.
And also, we didn't talk about, but Amari Cooper has not been practicing either. I believe he's missed 5 or 6 straight practices. And so Amari Cooper, this high, which he was still a wide receiver 1 come the end of the year, but that second half of the year, you just kept playing him, and he was killing you.
I've got to ask a question. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he can absolutely destroy your team. He is not a consistent player. He was a guy that would disappear, and you felt the need to start him. You have
no choice.
You don't have enough track record, and there's nothing definitive that says when he will. With Dez Bryant, you can look at the cornerback and kind of make a good choice. With Emmanuel Sanders, you can look at home road splits and say, I can make a good choice of when to sit him, when to start him. There's a trend. But you can't really figure it out yet with Cooper when he just disappears. And so that makes it difficult. But his upside, if you look at where, the guys going behind him are, you've got T.Y. Hilton, Doug Baldwin, and Brandon Cooks. The upside, if all of them hit, I think you'd have to go Cooper as the highest, maybe Cooks if we're just talking upside.
I've got to ask you a question, and it's a crazy one. So hypothetically, we talked about it. Amari Cooper's missed his fifth straight practice. If Cooper was out, how high do you move Michael Crabtree?
Like if he was out for the year, hypothetically?
Yeah, just hypothetically. I'm not trying to say he's going to be out or anything like that. I'm just curious. I've never asked this question. If Michael Crabtree's alone is the one,
do you think it helps or hurts him? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, I think it helps him.
It has to help him from just a locked and loaded guaranteed target share. I just wonder how high you'd rank him. If you're sitting here, is he 10? Would he take over Amari Cooper at number 10 on these rankings?
I think he would. I think he'd be right at the 2-3 turn. If you're, pretty much the only show in town for that offense, and you've got a good rapport and a good track record.
Seth Roberts says, "Come on now."
Now all that being said,
Cordero Patterson says, "Dude,
different.
Look at me."
Different alternate reality that does not exist.
No. I just was curious what you would do.
Yeah, I mean they finished back to back in the rankings last year, and Cooper helped you, or Crabtree did not hurt you as much as Cooper did.
Yeah.
So,
and to be fair, I have Crabtree at 10.
Whoa!
He's been there for a while for me. He is ahead of Amari Cooper in my rankings.
Melt my face. I did not have that helmet on.
Yeah, your brain exploded?
My brain exploded.
I apologize.
Well, look, we're going to give you some quick reaction to some of the preseason matchups tonight. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. Is there something, before I close out, is there something you're looking for from the preseason games tonight? A player you're excited about over week 1?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Dalvin Cook because he's a player that college you watched. Dalvin Cook was full on eye test. And I know that the tape people and the metrics people, we can't seem to all get along, which
that's why Arian Foster wasn't drafted.
I mean, we get along on this show,
yeah.
But Dalvin Cook bombed the combine, but looked like an electric player. All reports are that he's going to be the one. He looks fantastic in practice, so he's a running back I'm excited to see.
I want to see the eye test on Mixon compared to the other backs. I want to see Marshawn Lynch, see if he looks spry. Those are a couple.
Is Lynch even going to play?
Yeah, I would doubt it, but maybe.
I think
maybe
he's going to see some time.
A series.
Watching the other players play.
The first one that came to mind for me, they're not playing on the Thursday night slate, and also if you're not aware, there are a ton of games tonight. So make sure you're doing what you can to see football. But the one I'm looking forward to, because I'm the most curious and confused about it, would be the Tennessee wide receiver core. Who is out? Where is Rashard Matthews? Where is Eric Decker? Those two guys.
Oh, where do they line up?
Not only where do they line up, but when do they line up? What sets are? I mean, I don't know that we'll get enough series with them all to see. But while Corey Davis is not there, what formation are they in?
Confirm Marshawn is suiting up for tonight. I don't know how many snaps he'll get or any of that nature, but he is suiting up for tonight's game. Tomorrow we'll go through more of the running backs, some of that preseason reaction. We'll go with the wide receivers, actually.
And reminder, the tickets for Ballers Live, the Fantasy Footballers Live, they will go on sale tomorrow. Tomorrow at ballerslive.com, we are doing a live show. The podcast is going live
in Phoenix.
Doing it live on Labor Day, and those tickets will go on sale. I will remind you tomorrow, but get ready. Get in that digital line. Get your tickets because they're going to be limited.
All right, hey, check out playdraft.com/ballers if you want to play best ball with us. Each and every week we're starting leagues with the listeners. A lot of fun during the offseason. Playdraft.com/ballers. See you later.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.